Imagine lying on a stone slab while someone drills a hole into your skull. No anesthesia, just a stranger with a rock. Here's the thing. You were more likely to survive this in the Stone Age than in a 19th century hospital. Here are 8 medical treatments from history that would absolutely kill you today. Number 1, skull drilling. 10,000 years ago, if you had a headache, the treatment was straightforward, a hole in your head. This is called trepanning, and it is the oldest surgery we have archaeological evidence for. Practitioners would scrape, drill, or cut a hole into the patient's skull using stone tools, believing it would release evil spirits or relieve pressure. Here's what's genuinely surprising. It worked. Well, patients survived it. A 2018 study analyzing 800 ancient skulls found that in the Inca Empire, the survival rate was between 75 and 91%. Compare that to the American Civil War, where the mortality rate for cranial surgeries was 46 to 56%. Somehow, the ancient Peruvians were better at skull surgery than doctors with metal instruments and medical training. At one French burial site from 6500 BCE, 1/3 of all the skulls showed evidence of trepanning. Many of these skulls have healed bone around the holes, meaning these people lived for years. Afterward, some even had multiple holes, which means they went through the procedure more than once, and survived, each time. The Incas' secret? They probably operated in open-air environments, used herbal medicines, and used single-use tools, avoiding the hospital infections that would kill patients thousands of years later. Number 2, bloodletting. For over 3,000 years, the most common treatment for almost any illness was to drain blood from your body. Feeling tired? Remove blood. Got a fever? More blood out. Sore throat? You guessed it. The practice was based on the theory of 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If these were out of balance, you got sick. The solution was obvious: get rid of the excess, usually blood. A Greek physician named Galen declared blood the most important humor in the 2nd century, and he was so persuasive, so influential, that his writings, over 2 million words of them, shaped medical practice for the next 1,500 years. At the height of what historians call leech mania in the early 1800s, Paris hospitals alone used 5 to 6 million leeches per year. That's not a typo. They collected over 300,000 liters of blood annually. The word leech actually comes from the Old English word for physician. That's how synonymous doctors were with sucking your blood. Here's the thing. William Harvey proved the entire theory wrong in 1628. He showed that blood circulates. It doesn't just sit there waiting to be drained, but bloodletting continued for another 300 years. A medical textbook by William Osler still listed it as a treatment for pneumonia in 1942. George Washington probably died because of it. On his final day in 1799, doctors drained nearly 2.5 liters of blood from him while he was already suffering from a throat infection. They thought they were helping. Number 3, smokeware. In 1780s London, if you drowned in the River Thames, someone might save your life by blowing tobacco smoke up your rear end. This is not a joke. This was official medical practice. The Royal Humane Society installed resuscitation kits along the Thames specifically for this purpose. Dozens of stations, bellows, tubes, and tobacco. The idea was that the warm smoke and nicotine would stimulate the heart and lungs back into action. It was learned from indigenous North American peoples who used tobacco medicinally, and doctors in Europe decided to take it in a bold new direction. The first documented case was in 1746. A woman who appeared to have drowned was revived when her husband, on the advice of a passing sailor, inserted the stem of the sailor's pipe into her rectum, covered the bowl with perforated paper, and, quote, blew hard. She apparently woke up. So began the era of the tobacco smoke enema. Why didn't they just do mouth to mouth? Because in 18th century England, putting your mouth on an unconscious person's mouth was considered repugnant. This was their civilized alternative. The kits along the Thames included bellows, which was actually an improvement over earlier methods. Earlier doctors used their own lungs to blow the smoke, which risked, and I quote, accidental inhalation of the contents of the patient's anal cavity. Disease transmission was a concern. The society even offered cash prizes for anyone who could prove they brought someone back to life using their methods. Number 4, Mercury meals. If you had syphilis in the 1800s, the cure was to poison yourself with liquid metal until your teeth fell out. Mercury was the go-to treatment for syphilis for 400 years. It was taken as pills, rubbed on as ointment, and sometimes injected. Doctors told patients to keep taking it until they started drooling excessively. They thought the drooling meant the treatment was working. It actually meant the patient was developing mercury poisoning. Here's where it gets fascinating. When Lewis and Clark set off to explore the Louisiana Purchase in 1804, their medical kit included Dr. Rush's bilious pills, nicknamed Thunderbolts. Each pill contained 10 grains of calomel, a mercury compound. The explorers took these pills throughout their journey, and because mercury is a heavy metal that doesn't break down, historians can now literally trace Lewis and Clark's route by the mercury contamination in the ground. Archaeologists have found sites with abnormally high mercury levels and matched them to the expedition's known camping locations. We are tracking their bathroom habits 200 years later through toxic metal deposits. Mercury did sometimes kill the syphilis bacteria by attacking the enzymes within them. The problem is, it also attacked the enzymes in the human body. Patients lost their teeth, their gums rotted, they developed metallic breath, and many died. The cure was often worse than the disease. Effective treatment for syphilis finally arrived in 1910, and penicillin became the standard in the 1940s. Until then, liquid metal it was. If you're finding this interesting, consider subscribing. I drop videos like this regularly. Anyway, back to it. Number 5, dairy into veins. In the 1870s, blood transfusions were a nightmare. Blood clotted outside the body. Patients died from what we now know were incompatible blood types, and doctors were desperate for alternatives. Their solution? Cow's milk. The theory was that the fatty, oily qualities of milk would somehow transform into white blood cells once inside the body. So doctors began injecting milk directly into patients' veins. The first 2 patients seemed to improve. The next 2 died. A student of the original doctor continued the experiments. 2 more died. One patient's pulse dropped so rapidly after a milk injection that doctors had to resuscitate him with morphine and whiskey. He lived for 10 more days. Dr. Joseph Howe decided to test this properly. He bled dogs until they passed out, then tried to revive them with milk transfusions. Every single dog died. This should have been the end. It was not. The practice continued for over a decade, with doctors using milk from CC cows, goats, and humans. Most patients fell into comas. Most died. By 1884, saline infusions finally replaced milk as a blood substitute, mostly because doctors couldn't ignore how many people were dying. The discovery of blood types in 1901 eventually made actual blood transfusions safe, but for a strange decade in medical history, your doctor might have hooked you up to a cow. Number 6, whale spa. In 1890s Australia, if you had rheumatism, the prescription was to climb inside a rotting whale carcass and stay there for 30 hours. The town of Eden in Twofold Bay became a destination for arthritis sufferers. When whalers brought in a catch, patients would take rowboats to the whaling station, where whalers had carved holes in the carcass. Then they climbed in. The origin story involves a drunk gentleman who fell into a beached whale carcass and claimed his rheumatism disappeared. It may also trace back to the local Yuin indigenous people who used whale fat for pain treatment. Either way, the practice took off. Patients immersed themselves in the blubber, as in a Turkish bath. A ripe carcass was preferred. The exact species didn't matter, quote, so long as it stunk. One patient described the experience. Great blasts of gas and horrible bubbles would gush out around us. Everyone I met afterward shied at me. A leper could not have been avoided more. The treatment allegedly cured rheumatism for up to a year, but the social cost was severe. A local hotel profited from the influx of patients waiting for whales. As one newspaper later observed, quote, "It is questionable whether some persons might not prefer rheumatism to the whale cure." The practice ended around World War I, when whalers simply caught fewer whales. No more whales, no more whale therapy. Quick reminder, if you're enjoying this, subscribing really helps out. Now, where were we? Number 7, radium refreshments. In the 1920s, a wealthy golf champion named Eben Byers drank so much radioactive water that when they dug up his body 33 years later, it was still radioactive. Radium was newly discovered, and because it was found in hot springs, which were considered healing, entrepreneurs decided to bottle it. The Revigator was a ceramic crock made from uranium ore. You filled it with water every night, let it absorb radiation, and drank 6 to 7 glasses the next day. Your very own home radioactive spring. Radithor was even more direct, in small bottles of distilled water containing radium-226 and radium-228. The creator, William J. A. Bailey, called himself doctor despite having no medical degree. He marketed Radithor as a cure for 150 ailments, including impotence and aging. Doctors who prescribed it received a 17% kickback. Eben Byers was a Yale graduate who won the U.S. Amateur Golf Championship in 1906. After injuring his arm in 1927, his doctor recommended Radithor. Byers felt so good that he drank up to 3 bottles a day, nearly 1,400 bottles over the next few years. Here's what radium does. It gets absorbed into bone, and then it stays there, delivering radiation directly to your skeleton. Byers developed holes in his skull. His jaw disintegrated. When an investigator visited him, Byers was wrapped in bandages, most of his jaw surgically removed, holes forming in his skull. He died on March 31st, 1932. They buried him in a lead-lined coffin. When scientists exhumed his body in 1965, his remains measured 225,000 becquerels of radiation, still glowing 33 years later. The worst part? Scientists had published warnings about radium poisoning as early as 1913. The products were sold anyway. Number 8, the ice pick cure. In 1945, a psychiatrist named Walter Freeman took an ice pick from his kitchen drawer and began practicing on grapefruit. Then he moved on to cadavers. Then, in January 1946, he used it on a living patient. He called it the transorbital lobotomy. The procedure went like this. Freeman would use an electroshock machine to knock the patient unconscious. Then he'd insert an instrument shaped like an ice pick through the patient's eye socket, tap it through the thin bone with a mallet, and sweep it back and forth to destroy brain tissue. The whole thing took less than 10 minutes. Freeman didn't perform these in hospitals. He did them in his office. He claimed that 63% of patients improved, 23% were unchanged, and 14% got worse. In reality, many patients became apathetic, passive, emotionally flat. Some died. Freeman performed about 3,500 lobotomies during his career, 2,500 of them using the ice pick method. In July 1952, he performed 228 transorbital lobotomies in a 2-week period in West Virginia. Newspapers called it Operation Ice Pick. His longtime partner, neurosurgeon James Watts, left him over the practice. One of Freeman's patients was a 12-year-old boy named Howard Dully, lobotomized in 1960 because his stepmother found him defiant. Howard survived and later wrote a book about the experience. The lobotomy era ended not because people realized it was barbaric, but because something better came along. In 1954, doctors discovered that a pill called chlorpromazine, later sold as Thorazine, could treat psychiatric symptoms far more effectively and far more safely. The ice pick went back in the kitchen drawer. These 8 treatments have something in common. The doctors who performed them genuinely believed they were helping. Trepanning to release evil spirits, bloodletting to balance humors, lobotomies to quiet a troubled mind. Every era thinks it has medicine figured out, and every era looks back at the previous one in horror. The good news? Modern medicine is built on evidence, not theory. Controlled trials, peer review, regulations. We have systems now designed to catch the ice picks before they reach the patients. But here's the thing worth remembering. Somewhere out there, there's a treatment we're using today that future generations will find absolutely insane. We just don't know which one yet. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you.